Welcome back to Northeast Legends and Stories, where we dive deep into the rich tapestry of New England's past, uncovering tales that have shaped its history and captured imaginations across generations. There's something about those old wanderers who just show up in a town, leave a trail of stories, and keep folks talking for over a century. Like they're the original influencers, but with zero followers and all the mystery. Today, we're talking about one of the Northeast's all-time greats, the Leatherman, that silent leather-clad hiker who clocked hundreds of miles a month like it was his job, turning dusty roads into his personal runway. This isn't some ghost or tall tale spun from campfire smoke. It's a real guy who walked a predictable loop through Connecticut and New York for over 30 years, crashing in rock shelters, charming or confusing everyone he met along the way, and leaving behind a legacy that's equal parts heartbreaking and heroic. His story's got mystery, unbreakable routine, and that quiet determination that makes you think, what would I do if I just hit the road tomorrow? No phone, no plan. If you're lacing up hiking boots for a fall ramble or kicking back with a trail mix snack and a cozy blanket, this episode's for you. It's got history unpacked, like a well-worn backpack, hidden spots to visit that feel like time travel, and a nod to why we still chase these footloose legends with wide-eyed wonder. Let's hit the trail and see where his boots take us. All right, let's start at the beginning, or as close as we can get, because even that part's a bit fuzzy, like trying to read a map by moonlight. The Leatherman first pops up in records around 1857, spotted trudging through the Hudson Valley in New York, near the town of Ossining, where the river winds lazy and the hills roll like they've got secrets. He's in his late teens or early 20s, tall and sturdy, about 5 feet 10 inches with broad shoulders that speak to a life of hard labor, with a bushy beard that frames a face, weathered beyond his years, and hair that hangs long and wild under a leather cap stitched from odds and ends. What sets him apart right away, though, isn't his build or his gaze. It's the outfit. A full-body suit stitched from old leather scraps, everything from pants reinforced at the knees to a shirt with overlapping patches like medieval armor, even custom boots and a wide-brimmed hat that shades his eyes from prying stares. The whole getup weighs about 60 pounds, tough as nails and built to last through thorns, rain, and rough roads. He'd mend it obsessively, using a sailmaker's needle and heavy thread, turning repairs into a nightly ritual under the stars. He doesn't talk much, if at all. Locals later say he mumbled in French or broken English, perhaps a greeting like bonjour or a thank you grunt. But mostly he just nodded, grunted, or pointed when he needed food, water, or a place to crash for the night. His real name? For years, everyone called him Jules Bourglet, a French immigrant from the tanneries of Lyon who supposedly came to America chasing a leather business dream that went bust after a bad romance and a broken heart. The story goes like this, pieced together from diaries and doorstep chats. Jules falls hard for the boss's daughter at a bustling tannery in France. They get engaged amid the smell of hides and lye, but her dad, old school and status-obsessed, says no way. Too poor, too foreign, too everything. Devastated, Jules packs up his tools, sells what he can, and sails to the U.S. in the 1850s, landing in New York with dreams of starting his own shop. He tries, hustles in the leather districts of Manhattan, stitching belts and saddles. But the market's cutthroat, debts pile up, and that heartbreak festers. One day he snaps, or maybe heals in his own way. He stitches together his first suit from factory scraps, shoulders his pack, and starts walking. No destination, just motion. By the time he hits the Hudson Valley, the suit's his signature, a walking monument to lost love and lost trades. Now, is that the gospel truth? Well, a coroner's inquest, after his death in 1889, pinned it on Bourglet, based on a crumpled letter found in his pocket from a French relative, written in faded ink about family woes back home. But dig deeper into old newspapers and town ledgers, and it's shakier. Some historians think the name was a mix-up from a hasty reporter's notebook, and his French might have just been a heavy accent from somewhere else in Europe, maybe Belgium or even rural Quebec. Either way, by the 1860s, he's a fixture in the landscape, as reliable as the tides, walking a set route that's become legendary, a 165-mile loop, give or take, that he covers every 34 days. That's right, almost exactly a month, like clockwork, adjusting for weather or sore feet, but never missing a beat. He'd start in the Connecticut River Valley, kicking off in places like Middletown where the river gleams under factory smokestacks, hit towns like Meriden with its silverware shops and bustling markets, swing west through Waterbury's brass mills where the air hummed with hammers, and Thomaston crossing into New York's Hudson Highlands around Peekskill and Croton, where the river narrows and the cliffs loom like silent judges, then loop back east through Stamford's growing suburbs and Norwalk's salt marshes. Farmers knew his schedule better than their almanacs. They'd leave out bread, cheese, or pies on doorsteps or porch hooks, and he'd take what he needed, never more, always with a tip of his cap or a low bow that made kids giggle. In Stratford, Connecticut, the Clark family baked him a special pie every month. Apple in fall, pumpkin in winter, cherry when the orchards bloomed, and he'd sit on their porch for an hour, eating slow with a pocket knife, eyes on the horizon like he was waiting for a signal from across the sea. Kids followed him like a parade, calling Leatherman from behind picket fences, tossing apples or corn cobs. He'd catch 'em one-handed, flash a rare smile that crinkled his eyes and keep marching, his boots thudding a steady rhythm on dirt roads still rutted from wagon wheels. In Danbury, the hatters would slip him a new leather brim. In Kent, blacksmiths sharpened his knife for free, sparks flying as he watched with quiet interest. What fueled this routine, this endless circle that ate up his days like a compulsion? No one knows for sure, and that's a part of the fun. It's like guessing the punchline to a joke no one tells. Some say it was a vow, a self-imposed penance for that lost love, each mile a stitch mending his heart. Or maybe a deal with a factory owner who promised steady work if he kept to the path, dropping off mended samples at tanneries along the way. In the 1870s, a New York leather goods company supposedly paid him a pittance to test their hides, sending bundles of scraps to post offices on the route for him to stitch into his suit during stops, turning his body into a walking billboard. Others figure it was just habit, pure and simple. Once you walk enough miles, day after day, through sleet and sun, the feet find their way, muscle memory carving grooves deeper than any map. He slept rough most nights, claiming about 40-odd rock shelters and caves as his own private hotels. From shallow overhangs, big enough for a man curled fetal, to deeper dens lined with dried leaves, pine needles, and his leather gear folded like a blanket. He'd build small fires if wood was dry and legal, careful affairs with twigs and a flint striker. Cook simple meals like boiled potatoes scavenged from fields or corn mush stirred in a tin cup over the flames, and mend his suit by lantern light, the needle flashing like a firefly as he reinforced seams worn thin by brambles or boot polish from helpful cobblers. Rain or shine, he'd average 10 to 12 miles a day, that heavy leather creaking with every step, sweat soaking the inner layers in summer's sticky heat or freezing stiff in January's bite. Folks pitied him in winter when snow crunched under his boots like broken glass and icicles hung from his brim like a frozen crown. But he never begged, though in lean times he'd accept a wool blanket or plug of chewing tobacco without a word, folding the gift into his pack with a nod that said more than thanks ever could. And get this, he wasn't scary or off-putting, not like the rough tramps of the Gilded Age who got chased with shotguns or dogs. Far from it, the Leatherman was a gentle giant, almost courtly in his quiet way. The Reverend E.B. Treat, a pastor in New Hartford, Connecticut, wrote in his 1889 journal that he was a man of few words, but those words were kind, delivered with a politeness that shamed our hurried tongues. Women in Danbury gave him fresh shirts or mittens, knitting by firelight. Blacksmiths in Kent sharpened his knife for free, chatting about crops while he stood patient as a post. He even had a fan club of sorts, kids sketching him in school books with crayons and chalk, adults timing his arrivals like a human calendar, betting on whether he'd hit the Clark porch at 3:15 or 3:20 sharp. One story from the 1880s has him saving a farmhand from a runaway horse in Reading, grabbing the reins mid-gallop and calming the beast with a low whistle and steady hand, then vanishing down the road without a thanks, leaving the man sputtering gratitude to empty air. But there were tough spots, too. During the Civil War, when bluecoats and gray whispers filled the valleys, rumors swirled he was a spy. His silence and foreign look didn't help. And once in 1863, a suspicious militia captain stopped him near Waterbury, rifling his pack for contraband. He just stood there, arms out, until the man found nothing but leather scraps and let him go with a gruff, "Carry on, Frenchman." And illness? He toughed it out like everything else. In 1888, folks in Ossining noticed him coughing more, a wet rattle that slowed his pace to a shuffle. His beard flecked with frost even in mild spells. But he waved off doctors with a shake of his head, pressing on because the loop demanded it. Then, on a crisp March day in 1889, after 32 years on the trail, over 400,000 miles by some counts, the Leatherman doesn't show in Stratford. The Clark Pie sits untouched on the porch, cooling in the spring chill. Search parties fan out from farms and villages, lanterns bobbing through budding woods, and they find him March 24th in his favorite cave near Ossining, curled up under his leather cape like he was just resting, dead from cancer of the mouth. He's about 50, skin and bones under that suit, a French prayer book tucked in his pocket alongside a few tarnished coins and a worn rosary. The town buries him in an unmarked pauper's grave in Sparta Cemetery. The plot dug hasty in frozen ground, but locals chip in for a headstone later. Jules Bourglet, known as the Old Leatherman, 1824 to 1889. His suit, donated to a museum in Danbury, displayed under glass for curious crowds, but it crumbles to dust by the 1930s. Too brittle from years of wear and weather, the last threads of his world unraveling like a final goodbye. And just like that, the loop ends. No fanfare, no goodbyes waved from a hilltop. But the stories? They explode. Newspapers from the New York Times to the Hartford Courant run obituaries calling him the most remarkable tramp in America, with woodcuts of his silhouette against the Hudson. By the 1890s, his route's a tourist draw. Folks hiking to caves with picnic baskets, leaving offerings like the pies of old, turning his path into a pilgrimage for the curious. Now let's talk legacy, because the Leatherman isn't just a footnote in some dusty ledger. He's a touchstone for why we love these lone wolves, the quiet rebels who say no to settling and yes to the horizon. In a time when railroads were tying the Northeast together with iron spikes and steam whistles, shrinking the world to schedules and stations, he chose the slow road, a walking reminder that not everyone fits the factory whistle or the 9-to-5 grind. Books like Dan W. DeLuca's The Old Leatherman, 2008, sift through yellow diaries, faded deeds, and family Bibles, confirming the route mile by mile and debunking wilder myths, like him being a Civil War deserter dodging Pinkertons, or a French noble slumming it after the Revolution of 1848. DeLuca maps 41 shelters in detail, from shallow ledges etched with visitor names to full caves where bats still hang like forgotten coats, and interviews descendants of folks who fed him, like the Clark's great-grandkids, who remember Grandma's pie recipe as Leatherman's favorite, extra cinnamon for the road. The fascination? It's that mix of reliability and riddle. He's predictable as a train schedule, showing up like taxes, but silent as a stone. His story a blank page we fill with our own what-ifs. We see echoes in other vagabonds who roamed these parts. Think Johnny Appleseed, that apple-pushing wanderer who planted orchards across Ohio and Pennsylvania in the early 1800s, trading seeds for stories and leaving a legacy of pie trees from Pittsburgh to the Susquehanna. Or the Darn Man of Connecticut, a pre-Leatherman hobo from the 1840s who mended clothes for meals, patching his way from Hartford's steamboat docks to New Haven's Yale gates with a needle and a wink. These guys capture our soft spot for the outsider who earns respect on foot. Not flash, trading labor for loaves, silence for space. Today, with apps tracking every step and influencers monetizing sunsets, the Leatherman's analog endurance hits different. He's the original thru-hiker minus the GoPro and gluten-free bars, proving you don't need Wi-Fi to leave a mark. Festivals pop up in his honor, like the annual Leatherman hike in Waterbury every spring, where hundreds lace up boots and retrace bits of his path through budding maples, swapping tales over campfires crackling with s'mores and speculation. And in pop culture, He's inspired folk songs by local troubadours like the Bottle Hill Boys, who croon ballads of his loop over banjo strums at county fairs. A 2015 play and Ossining called The Leatherman's Last Walk, staged in an old barn with actors in homemade leather vests, and even a craft beer from Two Roads Brewing, Leatherman IPA, bold and unfiltered, with a label showing his silhouette against a harvest moon, poured at trailhead tap rooms for hikers to toast the miles. It's fun, right? In a world of constant connection and curated feeds, his silence screams freedom, a reminder that sometimes the best stories are the ones you live, not post. Speaking of paths worth chasing, let's get practical. If you're itching to chase his ghost and feel those old boot prints underfoot, hit some of those caves and shelters. They're scattered along the loop like hidden Easter eggs, mostly on public land now, easy day hikes with a map app and sturdy laces. But pack layers because the northeast weather flips like a coin. Start in Watertown, Connecticut at Black Rock State Park off Route 8. Plenty of free parking at the main lot near the pond, where ducks quack like they're in on the joke. Follow the blue-blazed Mattatuck Trail south from the kiosk, about a mile of moderate ups and downs with rocky scrambles that test your balance and hemlock shade that cools the sweat. At the Crane's Lookout Overlook, where the view stretches to the Naugatuck like a postcard, veer left on the Jericho Trail, still blue blazes, and in 0.3 miles, you'll spot Leatherman's Cave, a 20-foot overhang under a massive boulder ledge, big enough for a man and his gear to hunker down, with charred fire spots from his nights and faint soot stains on the ceiling like ancient tattoos. It's tight. Watch your head on the low entrance and bring a headlamp because the back's pitch black, cool, and damp, even in July. From there, it's a 2-mile loop back to the lot, passing birch groves where birds chatter like gossiping locals. Perfect for pondering his pie breaks or snapping a selfie without the filter. Head east to Upland Woods in Hamden, near the edge of Sleeping Giant State Park for a gentler jaunt. Trailhead off Reservoir Road, just pull into the gravel lot by the gate, no fee, and hop on the yellow blazed loop trail that winds through oak woods alive with chipmunks. It's 1.5 miles round trip, flat enough for a stroller if you're bringing the family, with boardwalks over wet spots that keep your socks dry. The cave's a shallow niche in a trap rock cliff about halfway in, knee-high but cozy for one, carved by glaciers and lined with moss that glows faintly in flashlight beams, offering views over Mill River where he might have fished for trout with a handmade line. Easy access year-round, and in spring, wildflowers, trillium, and violets carpet the path like a welcome mat, making it feel less like a hike and more like a stroll with a storybook twist. Cross into New York for the Ward Pound Ridge Reservation, off Route 35 in Cross River, a sprawling 4,300 acres of woods and ponds that feels worlds away from the city hum. Enter at the Maple Grove lot near the Visitor Center. Small parking fee on weekends. Follow the green trail around Sloper's Pond. Flat and scenic with lily pads and frog choruses about 2 miles out through Fern Meadows. The cave's just past the Purple Trail Junction, tucked in a boulder cluster. A deep cleft under leaning rocks with room to stand upright, etched with visitor carvings from the 1900s. Respect the no-mark policy now, rangers are eagle-eyed. Picnic tables and grills nearby make it a full day. Pack sandwiches, play frisbee, and imagine him mending leather while ducks paddle by. Don't miss the one in Seymour, Connecticut, at Indian Wells State Park off Route 67. A gem for water lovers. Red trail from the lot near the beach. Day use fee in summer. A 1-mile descent with steep wooden stairs that creak like old floorboards, leading to a boulder-strewn ravine by the Naugatuck River. The cave's a low arch under a massive glacial erratic, damp and ferny inside. Big enough for two if you're friendly, where locals say he wintered over during blizzards, huddling with a small fire against the chill. Sturdy shoes are a must for the slick rocks, but the reward's a swimming hole in summer or ice fishing vibes in winter, plus river views that stretch to the Housatonic. Pure Leatherman territory. Pro tip: check All Trails or the Connecticut Forest and Park Association maps for updates. Trails shift with erosion or fallen trees, and some spots need DEEP passes in peak season to beat the crowds. Pack out trash like he did, zero waste, all respect. Leave offerings if you want, a modern pie nod or a shiny pebble, and go with a buddy. because cell service dips in the valleys like a bad signal on a long call. These aren't theme park haunts with gift shops and actors. They're quiet nods to a guy who owned the road, places where the wind whispers his name, and the stones hold his shape. Hike one, sit quiet for a minute, and you'll get why he never stopped. The trail's the point, the loop, the life. What I love is how the Leatherman makes you want to lace up and go. His loop's still there, waiting like an old friend with a story. In a Northeast full of rush hour gridlock and endless Zoom calls, he's proof that a good walk solves a lot, mile by mile. Next time you're near Waterbury or Ossining, detour to a cave, sit a spell with a thermos, and listen for boot leather on stone. You might just hear his rhythm, steady and sure, calling you forward. That's our hike through the Leatherman's world. A vagabond who turned steps into legend and silence into song. If this got you plotting your own loop or daydreaming about ditching the desk, hit us on socials with your wanderer tales. Who's your favorite road tough character, the one who'd share a campfire yarn? Until next